Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be playing with mixed media and marks in my small 6x6 Dina Wakley art journal. So I've started off with my art journal. I haven't gessoed it, I've just sprayed it with water, and I'm just dropping in some of the incredible inks from Jane Davenport. Now any dye ink will work the same, or liquid watercolour. But basically what I'm doing is just dropping in some inks to get some solid colours and shapes in the background. I want some to bleed out, I want some stronger colours. So just control what you're doing with your spray bottle, and you can apply them just directly out of the pad like I've done with the bottles here. You can see I'm trying to put in some stronger colours. Now I would strongly encourage, if you're doing this, to make sure you're using a really decent watercolour paper, or in the case of this journal, this is cotton rag paper, but it's really thick cotton rag paper, so it doesn't actually bleed through to the other side. I have done this in my Dina Wakley journal before, in the normal journal, and if it's not gessoed or sealed, the inks will go through, so just be warned. You can also do something very similar with this by just using some acrylic paints in the background, just to get sort of blobs of colour. So just to sort of define some of the areas, I'm going in with some watercolours and just adding in some brights in different areas. You can see them sort of bleeding out and giving some strong edges to some of the shapes. These shapes are going to give me some areas that I'm going to do some mark making in. Now, as you can see here, I've stuck to a cools palette of blues, greens and purples. That's quite important when you are working or doing this technique, to sort of stick to warms or cools, because you're mixing dye inks together basically. If I mixed some, purples and oranges together, I'm going to get really yucky browns. So just be aware, you will need to use your colour theory a little bit when you're doing this. If you don't have access to a good colour theory thing, look it up on the internet. It'll tell you sort of what colours will work really nicely together. To add a little bit of shimmer and interest to the page, I'm going in with some metallic watercolours. Now these are handmade watercolours by Designs by Rachel Beth. She sells them occasionally on Etsy. She's got Instagram. She's got very popular and has stopped really making them as often as she used to. So if you ever get your chance to get your hands on a set, jump at them, because they are beautiful to use. So you can sort of see this galaxy type thing happening in the background. I'm going in with some lighter blues and so on, just to dull down some areas and to mix them together. And I'm really not thinking about what I'm doing. It may look very deliberate, but it really isn't. It's just me looking at the page and going, oh, some blue will work there, or I need to put a little bit more purple there, and so on. You can see I also added some colour around the outside of the edge, just to give a little bit of a border. That's just because I have a running battle with white space. So I'm sure if you can handle white space, you don't need to do that. That's just my little quirk. I'm also going in with some metallic purples, again, just to hype up that purple a bit and just give this really nice shimmery background. So once I've finished this, basically what I'm going to do is just play with a lot of the different materials that I have, or pens that I've got, or just different bits and pieces. So one of the pens I'm using here are the metallic pens from Jane Davenport, I think Silver Screen and Golden Age, just to add a little bit more sparkle. Because I hadn't used them before, I just wanted to see what they look like. I'm now going in with my Stabilo All pencil and just drawing over one of the areas. So basically what I'm going to do is, I tend to work in threes when I'm doing this. I'll choose 3 different areas to add some pattern to on my page. I tend to use, if I'm doing in the greeny area here, I'll go and do the pattern in the greeny area somewhere else on my page. There's really no rhyme or reason to how it goes. I've done on my channel, if you've been following it for a while, I've done some other pages very similar to this in the past. The reason I keep coming back to doing something like this is because it's just a great way of exploring what materials that you have and how they work together, and using them in a different way, or practicing your mark making. which is something, while I do it a lot on my page, I tend to stick with the same marks. So doing some different marks or doing it in a different way sort of helps push me out of my comfort zone. So this is another new material which I haven't really used before, which is the drama sticks from Jane Davenport. They're thin oil pastel, which is a permanent oil pastel. So it's sort of goes over the top of anything. Now I'm just going in with my paint pen and just making some random little tally marks in the background. And you saw me testing out my paint pen just to make sure it works. One of the tricks, particularly with white paint pens, is to make sure you really shake them up beforehand so the paint is opaque as possible as it comes through. And you do need to be aware that make sure your underneath is really, really dry, and there is a likelihood that your white will pick up the colour from below, particularly if it's a really strong dye from below. Now, in this case it didn't, because the incredible inks from Jane Davenport are semi-permanent. If I'd used the Dilutions dyes, for example, they're water reactive. So my white paint pen would have picked up the colour from the Dilutions dye. So now I'm going in with some chalk pastels, and this is the License to Quill pen. I love this pen because just by dabbing it on the page you get these cool little raindroppy effects all over your page. Using my foodball pen, just making some circles. This is just having lots and lots of fun. Now, one of the things I've come to realize with my mark making is I like really random mark making. I like changing the sizes and the shapes of things and not sticking, well, I say not sticking within a border. I am sticking within a border in these pieces, as you can see, but that the borders are, I suppose, more organic shapes. They're not rigid boxes. When I've done something similar with this to for my mum, or with my mum, sorry, she likes things looking quite geometric, and she was getting really frustrated because she's like, why do your marks look like that and mine look like this? And it was just because of our different style. So doing pieces like this really helps you explore what your style is and what you like and what's natural to you. There's no right or wrong way for doing it. The other reason that I was doing this is at school I've been asked to teach the teachers how to do an art lesson, and some of our teachers are incredibly talented artists and some have never touched a paintbrush before. So I thought doing something like this where the teachers could explore all the different art materials that we have in our school and see how they work together. You know, you've got dyes in the background and you can use oil pastels over the top, and you can put some chalk pastels over it, and you can just do all these different things. It's something that kids can do really easily. There's no right or wrong to it. It doesn't need to look like a finished picture, so there's no pressure to it. So it is a really great warm-up activity to do. And I would suggest, if you've never had a go at doing something similar to this, it certainly doesn't need to look like this, but just have a play around with the equipment you've got and see how it all works together and how it layers over the top of each other and what works with what and what you don't like and what you do like. It just makes it really easy in the end when you're going back to do some stuff, because you can kind of use it as a reference page of, oh, that worked, oh, that didn't, oh, I haven't tried that before, I want to try that again. So you can see here I'm sort of layering over paint pens and then putting some of the foodball pen over the top of it. Going in with some paint over pens, which are another type of acrylic paint, I suppose. I'm making these cross-like shapes, and again these are sort of ones that I like to have big ones and little ones, and you can sort of see me weaving the patterns through other patterns, so you've got that sort of flow happening. Doing things like this always kind of reminds me of seaweed or under the sea. I don't know why, maybe it's the colour palette. It just looks very frenetic and lots of stuff happening. So now I'm going in with some of the Scribble Sticks, which is a water activated pigment stick, kind of like a water activated crayon. And I'm just dipping the end in water to activate it, and then just using the bottom of it as a circle and stamping that over. Now I'm going in with some chalk pastels and making some marks with those on the page. I haven't sealed any of these, and to be honest, I haven't really found that the chalk pastels have smudged all that much. I wouldn't be too greatly concerned if they did, because it would just add to the overall piece. I have found if I'm doing bigger pieces, I like to actually blend the chalk pastels in with my finger, because I find the oils in your hand actually sort of bind the chalk pastel to the paper. It's probably not great if you're doing a piece of artwork that you want to last for posterity, but for being in my art journal it works fine. So now I'm just going in with some other pens and pencils and just overlapping over the top. Going back to the scribble sticks, adding in some highlights to them, using the white pen, and you can sort of see there the white pen is picking up some of that colour from the background, so you get that sort of opaque pink colour. Going in with the License to Quill pen, which is a permanent paint, a permanent ink, sorry, so it will draw over anything. And now I'm just adding in some extra dots, which I obviously missed out last time. So when I was finished with this, I decided I needed to do something around the edges and fill in some of those blank space. Oh, first of all, I've gone in with the drama stick again, just to make those highlights a little bit whiter. The drama stick is that permanent oil pastel, so it sort of sticks on top, but it is extremely soft, so it can break really easily. So just be aware that you do need to use the lightest touch with it, and even then it will still probably break. If it does, just keep the piece that's broken off and you can sort of smudge it into a page somewhere else. So to kind of finish this piece off, I'm doing some bits and pieces around the border, just sort of filling in that white space, because again, I just can't leave white space. It's a real issue, I tell you. I like that it kind of hangs off the edge and sort of, again, adds to that almost coral-like feel to the page. It's probably me reading too much into it, but that's what it kind of reminds me of as I do it. I particularly love these chains of bubbles, which are sort of the big bubbles and little bubbles all together. They remind me of the seaweed that has the little bubbles in it. I don't know the name of it, but I really like them. So this is sort of coming towards the end of my piece. Now, this is done in a 6x6 journal. It really didn't take, I think it took less than an hour to do this page. And I had most of the equipment that I wanted to use sort of sitting around me. I would suggest, if you're going to do this, just put out the equipment you want to use in front of you, and it really challenges you to have a go and use it. And I found this quote chip, which I thought was perfect, because it said, find joy in the ordinary. And just making marks is very, very ordinary, but it just is lots of fun. I find it very, very relaxing, and something that I can just really not have to think about. I'm just doing, which is perfect for when you just need to switch off and do. This is a close-up of the final page. You can see all the different textures and colours, how they've all overlapped together and how they all work together. I would highly encourage, if you haven't done something like this before, please have a go. It's so much fun. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.